You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. I hope you all are well. So this week, I have a fun and, dare I say, feisty conversation with Sandra Bueckert, the owner and founder and trainer at One Fitness in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Sandra started bodybuilding when she was just 16. Now, 40-some years later, she's still in the strength and fitness game, but she's made a few changes. She still wants to look her best, but that's not her driving force these days. These days, she's training to be part of the resistance, specifically to defy what people assume a midlife, menopausal, and eventually, quote-unquote, old woman should be able to do. And I am here for it. It is time to shred the script. For those who missed it, past guest Melanie McQuaid recently qualified for Ironman Kona World Championships Pro Race at age 50. When I had Mel on the show last year, or maybe late 2021, she told me that her three main bucket list goals when she turned 50 were to win an Ironman, qualify for Kona, and go sub 9. Well, she nailed one of those, and I will certainly be cheering her on for the other two. Also, recently, Isa Pulver just became the overall men and women solo winner of Race Across America with an impressive time of 9 days, 12 hours, and 16 minutes. It's the second time a woman has taken the overall at RAM, and that time was another past guest, Leah Goldstein, who was also in her 50s when she accomplished that feat. We need to toss out the preconceived, super outdated notions of what it means to be a midlife woman and beyond. And women like Sandra are leading the charge. And she doesn't sugarcoat it. Some shit is harder now, no doubt. But there are ways to keep on keeping on. And we talk about all of that and then some in this conversation. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I'll put a link to her business, One Fitness, in the show notes so you can learn more about her. Okay, before we get to it, as always, check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Sign up for my free weekly menopause blog at feistymenopause.com. You can send me questions at hitplaynotpause@livefeisty.com or at that SpeakPipe voicemail address that is in the show notes. You can come on in and join our Level Up membership. That's at feistymenopause.com as well. And thank you, as always, for the continued great reviews. They keep coming in and I love them. And 5-star ratings. It really does help. I'm able to get all these great guests and the show continues to grow, and I appreciate you. All right. Super quick thanks to Amino Co. for their continued support of the show. I have been loving their Perform Essential Amino Acid product, which is clinically shown to increase peak strength and endurance levels and decrease recovery time. And I can attest that I feel sharper and I have less fatigue when I'm using it, especially with all this Ironman training. And that is finally coming up this weekend. And I'll be really happy to talk about that when it's done. So thanks for Amino Co. for your support. All right. Enough of me. Let's have a word from those awesome sponsors and get on with the show. Okay, Sandra, like I was saying before I hit record, we've had this on the books for quite a bit now, and time flies, and here we are. So I'm glad to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Celine. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
So let's talk a bit about, you found us through Sarah, right? Through our...
Yeah, one of my clients brought up menopause has been kicking my butt, Celine. And so I was speaking to her one day and she said, "Oh, there's this great Facebook page and they have an app. You should join." And that's how I started reading about you and checking on the group and following the podcast. And I'm so glad that I did. You guys are doing phenomenal work.
Well, thank you. And now here you are.
And now here I am, a member of the club.
Join the club. So before we talk about that club, let's go back in your history. But you're like the third, you might be just the second bodybuilder I've had on who got involved like way back in the day, before women were, when it was still pretty uncommon. I would love to hear like how you stepped into that world, and like, were you like 20? How, like, when was this?
Girl, I was 16 years old.
Oh, get out.
I was 16. What a pivotal year that was. So, my family moved from Oshawa, Ontario, and we moved to this Edmonton, home of Wayne Gretzky,
Hmm.
the Oilers hockey dynasty. And Celine, I was a quirky kid, okay? I was the kid who wore skinny jeans and pointy toe flat shoes. I wore riding pants and, jodhpurs and riding boots. I was a fashionista at a very young age. And being a fashionista got me on the radar of the school bully.
Mm.
And so this girl would punch lockers, intimidate me, go out of her way to do things to make my new kid in the school experience a living hell. So one day I was in a class and this girl, I don't know why our teacher stepped out, but he had to go to the office, stepped in, grabbed my arm, pulled it up behind my back, and bent me over in front of my whole class. To say that time slowed down wouldn't do it justice. Celine, she was wrenching on my arm like she was going to break it. And I don't know where it came from, but I turned around and I just punched her in the face. And she let my arm go. She was shocked because bullies aren't used to people fighting back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I fought back. And then it wasn't long after that that I found myself down in our high school, in the bowels of our high school. We had a gym where the football jocks worked out. And I used to hide around the corner and I'd watch what they do and I'd go in and I'd mimic it, okay? But I was dabbling with it. And then one day I happened to be in a Safeway and I saw Kiki Aloma, and she was the new sort of Miss Olympia at the time.
I
And
know
I
that
had,
name.
yeah, I'd never seen a woman that was toned and athletic. And back then, I mean, God, over 40 years ago, she looked great, very feminine and athletic. Back then, models were more emaciated. They had the projecting hip bones, thin, like they just didn't look
They
healthy.
look terrible.
They look terrible. And this really appealed to me. So I bought that Muscle and Fitness and I took it home, and it opened up a whole new world to this 16-year-old kid. And I started applying what I was learning. Girl, there were days I couldn't walk. I was so stiff and sore, but I just went back for more. And eventually I realized that in order to get more from my training, I needed to take it up a notch. So I signed up at a Mr. C's, an all male, hardcore bodybuilding gym. 16.
Wow. What did they think of you?
And I was a pest. Get this kid. But Celine, I want to know, does your butt look like that? How do you make your arms look like that? Like I asked a lot of questions and I took in what they were telling me and I would apply it. And then my nutrition was horrific because I grew up in a Jamaican household. My mother was an amazing cook. She was, short and round, and I ate that way. But as I worked with the guys, I started learning about nutrition and how it was an integral part of my training. And then my physique started to change. And I didn't understand how I could weigh the same, but my clothes were sliding over my body and I was so much leaner. So it was this real evolution for a 16, 17-year-old kid to see my body change through what I was doing in the gym. Let me tell you, girl, it was a motivating boost. And so that's how I got involved.
I feel like we could do a whole show on this, but I do have a couple of questions. So how, like, did they have you eating more protein, and how did your mother receive you?
You showed my mama you loved her food by having a plate, you know, overflowing. That's how you show love and appreciation for cooking in my home. And I had never really thought about portions. I had never thought about what the hell is protein, or fats. We cooked with a lot of oil and lard and white rice and white flour and, fatty meats. Like Celine, this was quite this seismic shift for me to start to learn about balanced eating and what protein was going to do for my muscles and my skin, and what kinds of carbohydrates, rice, and I ate potatoes and yams, and learning how that was going to rebuild my body. Like, holy, incredible experience. And then I went on and obtained certifications and competed and went back and trained more, and my body kept developing and changing.
And how long did you do that?
I trained for, so I probably entered my first competition when I was about 17 and a half. It was funny because bodybuilding was never my interest. I was learning to lift weights and my physique was changing. And then the guys at the gym would say, "You should compete." I'm like, ew, those women are gross. No, you should compete. I couldn't see, for example, my signature was my back. I had a very muscular back, and the very first time I posed it on stage, the audience gasped. I had no idea what I looked like from behind. So it was a very different experience. My sisters thought I was crazy. Jamaicans, we run, right? We are runners. We do not lift weights and bodybuild. Traitor. But yes, bodybuilding was my calling. I was built for it.
And how long did you pursue it? Like, how far into I mean, I know you opened a gym of your own then when you were maybe, I don't know, 23, I think I read.
Well, exactly. So I started around 16. I became the junior Canadian champion in my sport. I took 2 years to train because I wanted to enter the senior ranks, but I didn't. I'm a planner. So I wanted to enter in the best possible shape that I could. So off season, I put on weight. I lifted very heavy. I cleaned up my diet, and I trained 2 years, Celine, for one day. And when I entered that event, the Northerns, I won that. Went on to the provincials. I won that. I was one of the youngest ever to win it, but I won it. I won my class. And then I went on to second in Western Canada.
Wow. And then when did you open your gym?
Lord, girl, so I was about 23, or around 23. What was happening was people kept coming up to me in the gyms. Women would ask me, how do you do that? How do you make your arm look like that? I have a wedding to get ready for. Or a chef said, "Sandra, I've gained 40 pounds tasting. Can you just help me to trim off some of this fat?" So people kept coming out of the woodworks and asking me for help. And eventually I realized that I could turn my passion into a profession. I graduated in business from NAIT. And so I used my small business savvy and put it together with my personal training and created one-on-one personal fitness in Calgary.
Which you still operate to this day.
Girl, it's been 34 years. That 23-year-old kid, I look back at my career and it blows my mind as to the things that I've experienced.
Are you still involved in the bodybuilding arm of it at all? Like, is that still something that you in any way are involved with, or how have you evolved as you've gone
So
on?
yeah, so it's interesting because maybe 1 in 1,000 comes to me for bodybuilding. The vast majority are people who have gone into gyms, don't know what they're doing. They want to lose weight. They want to improve their fitness. I've had people hire me to come to their homes when I first began because, again, they're intimidated when they're in the gyms. They do want to change their bodies, but they really didn't know how to begin. And so I listen and then I create programs and I work with people and I help them to transition as they train and start to make it a part of their regular life.
Yeah.
So for the everyday people, our clients are about 40 to 80 years old.
Have your views on fitness evolved over these 34
Huh?
years?
Oh no, I'm still 23. Not kidding. Yeah, when I was younger, it was all about strength. I was as strong as an ox, Celine. I thrived on it. I was squatting 320 pounds when I was 21 years old, and I've always been.
Wow.
Yeah, I have always been drug-free. I believe in nutrition. I believe in training well or smart. I believe in recuperation. And when I was younger, it was about being strong and building muscle so that I could compete. But now that I'm older, my body has gone through so many shifts going through menopause. My training now is about my sanity, you know. I work out and it helps my mood. I feel strong. I see so many women unable to lift bags or groceries or carry briefcases or backpacks. We women, we just give up on ourselves as we get older. You know, we want our husbands or our kids to do things. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to, you know, push a barrel or a wheelbarrow with rocks in my yard, carry my briefcase if I have to. I want to be able to keep up with life. And for me, lifting is a part of maintaining my lifestyle, my strength, my sanity, my moods, staying leaner or as lean as I can. Um, it's for mental as well as physical.
How has menopause impacted you?
Shockingly, in a more difficult than I actually expected it to be. It sort of snuck up on me, you know, because at first it was the waking up with the back of my neck soaked. And Celine, I was such an idiot. I would be like, oh, my blanket's too. And that kept up for a little while. And then I realized, okay, there's a pool of water on my chest. And then my breasts would keep swelling and changing in tenderness. And then my moods. And then the hot flashes put it right over the top. The hot flashes and the not sleeping, waking up like I'm sleep drunk. So it's really been more difficult than I expected. Yeah.
When did that start?
The well, I should say that I had a hysterectomy at around 35 or so. So I have one ovary.
Mm.
Um, uh, I'm 57 now. Maybe around 50 or so, things started really going sideways. And then the lack of sleep just like a domino, just kept coming. And then eventually I went on estradiol, the hormone replacement.
And are you done? Are you post menopause? Or are you still waiting for the day?
The hot flashes are brutal. The hot flashes are brutal. So the estradiol is helping. I'm on the lowest dose.
Okay, that's good.
But it's going to be a journey. I'll say that much. Part of the reticence or the being hesitant for me is we have cancer in my family. So my mom died with breast cancer, my grandmother cancer, breast cancer, and my aunt breast cancer. So it took me a very long time to go on the estradiol patch. And then within 2 days of going on it, my hot flashes dropped 80%.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's a game changer for me in getting my life back.
Oh, for sure. Are you getting a cycle anymore? Or are you done with the whole menstrual cycle thing?
No cycle. I don't have the plumbing.
Right, you got to history. Right.
That is all. I danced down the pad aisle. I danced down the aisle when my hysterectomy was done. It was like
Right.
so fun. I don't need you anymore. I don't have to look at my calendar.
Right. Right. You said, I guess I was thinking, but you still had an ovary. So you
Yes.
could, okay. So you're purely going off of symptoms and you were still having raging hot flashes. And that's what yeah.
Yeah, but not sleeping,
Mm,
which then affects the next day as far as performing at work,
totally.
uh, food. And then the more tired I am, the worse I will eat. I will order in, I will order junk because I feel pity party, sorry for myself, and then I'm having more red wine, which triggers the hot flashes. So it's like this vicious cycle that I got in, and I needed to get off of that. So I went to a Well Woman Clinic here in Calgary, met with Dr. Packer, and got myself started down this journey. And I'm now wearing this Astrodot patch.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's working. And you're not the only person with cancer in your family, and not the only person who has that concern. Even though, like the research shows, those risks are not what we thought they were, and certainly lower than they thought they were. But what was your doctor's? I mean, how was her approach given your family history?
She was amazing. She's only specialized with women going through menopause. And, Celine, I recall filling out the paperwork and looking at all the symptoms or just all the things that were going on if you're going through menopause. The page was a mile long. And only when I sat there and I started looking through all these things that I realized how long and how much I hadn't connected to what was going on with me. So she spent an hour in that first visit with me. Family history, my history, what I was dealing with. She was amazing. And that was very helpful.
That's so good to hear too, because the opposite happens so very often, where women don't get the time, they don't get the attention.
Absolutely. And I had the opposite for a very long time because I would go into family doctors, or we have here in Calgary, walk-in places too, if you don't have a family doctor. And I had a whole bunch of different things going on. And the first thing they want to give you is an antidepressant. Well, maybe we could talk a little bit more about my age and what may be coming from that, but not at all. You got 5 minutes and you're in and out with a prescription in your hand.
And did you ever try that route?
Absolutely. In fact, I first went on, well, not because of menopause. I've been on antidepressants as a result of going through divorce. So it
Mm.
was a event-related sort of a thing. But funny enough, Dr. Packer mentioned that there is an antidepressant that women going through menopause can try. So if the Estradot doesn't quite hit the spot, she might put me on this Effexor.
Yeah.
To see if it'll help me more than the Estradot.
But it sounds like the estradiol's working for you. It sounds like the patch is working.
I'm actually shocked that it could be that effective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great, because that, as you've sort of mentioned, it is all this domino effect, right? Like if you're having these, because if you have them at night and they wake you up and like all the other things, and everything just gets exacerbated because you're stressed all the time, which feeds the hot flashes, which feeds so you just get in that cycle that you can't get out of.
And it's a terrible cycle because, as you walk through it, right? So not sleeping, not just at night, but then how it affects you in the day, because I get them in the day too,
Yeah.
right? And then my poor husband at night, the blankets are on and off and on and off, and he's being disrupted. Then you get up and you feel like the Walking Dead, and you've got to go to work. And my memory was being affected,
Yeah.
right? appointments, dates, times, people. It really can screw with you if you don't know what you're dealing with.
100%. How has your training changed as you've been going through the transition here?
Uh, I have noticed that I have more joint pain.
Hmm.
Okay.
Be interested
Now,
if that changes.
well, and so my physio says, Sandra, you know what? Being athletic, some of this is related to the amount of weight you were lifting when you were younger. Okay.
Mm.
So I do have joint pain. So when I train now, I do a lot of mobility exercises, glute bridges, clamshells, monster walks. I do a lot of banded work to prep my body when I am especially about to do leg work. And I do banded work for my shoulders because I have shoulder issues as well now. So I am training, I am weightlifting. In some ways, though, I have to walk a fine line. The days that I'm really tired, I back off and I lift less weight. And the days that I feel strong, I will lift heavier, lift some heavy shit, Celine, and put it down and lift it again. But it's a back and forth depending on how I slept and how I'm feeling, how much stress I might be under. I really look inward and gauge my training with that.
Sounds like such a very smart approach to training. What I'll be curious to see, because some people find relief from some of that joint pain through hormone therapy as well, because there's an inflammatory process there. So it'll be interesting to see if that abates at all for you.
Okay, I will look at that because we increased my dosage with the estradot,
Mm-hmm.
and I have yet to try it. So I will let you know if I notice anything.
Yeah, please do, because that is one of the first guests I had on the show was Mary Jane Minkin, who she's like Madam Ovary. She calls herself. She's been around forever. But she sees, she is very active herself. She runs, rides a bike, and she had some people coming to her saying, like, I used to ride centuries and all this stuff, and like everything hurts. And in estrogen, she's like, that's the first thing I try, and it often works for them. So it'd be great to see if that works for you.
And I've noticed when I'm tired, I just can't lift the weight. It's like my muscles are pre-fatigued.
Oh
They're
yeah.
they're before I've even begun.
Yep.
So the joints definitely, they're not loving those days. But again, the more mobility work that I do, the smoother I run, the smoother my body works, the less hiccups I have with my hips and my knees, and my shoulders when I do my mobility work religiously.
Yeah. Yeah, that becomes non-negotiable, right? I think that mobility work and that activation work is just like it just needs to be there.
It
But it's
does.
it's interesting you talking about the pre-fatigue, because I've written about this in the past, and there was just another study that came out that like they do these studies with people where they give them like ridiculously hard sort of cognitive tests, and like fatigue their brain, and then they take them into the gym, and because the brain is tired, like it can't really tell the muscles what to do as well, because this is your command central, right? So
Yeah.
I've never really thought about this like this before, but it makes sense to me that when you are being cognitively affected in menopause, and we know that we know the brain goes through a transformation too with the estrogen changes, that
Mhm.
you would have that effect of not feeling as strong and not having that stamina, because your brain is literally like tired. It's not getting the glucose metabolism, it's not doing these things, it's in this transition. Like that makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. And, you speak about the 23-year-old kid versus me now. And the more I read, for example, Dr. John Rady's work, the Harvard neuroscientist, if I do not work out, my mood, girl, there's the other two doors, bitchy and cranky. If I don't work out, I am not the same. When I work out, I am clearer. I am more motivated. I'm more focused. I can concentrate. My memory is better. If I didn't work out, I really don't know how I would get through menopause. I've got to tell you, like, it is critical.
Let me ask you this. Do you ever have times where you're having a hard time motivating yourself and you know that that is waiting for you, so it motivates you to get moving? Like that, you know what I'm saying?
So there's a few ways I've had to learn to manipulate myself to
Right.
get
That's kind of
done
what I'm getting at.
yeah, that I've had to learn to manipulate myself to get things done in life. Like, if I really don't want to do cardio, tell myself just 10 minutes.
Oh, I do
Oh,
that all the time.
just 10 minutes.
Just 10 minutes. That's
Go for 10 minutes. And if you could step off if you just don't feel like it. And of course, as you get going and the fog lifts, and I distract myself with music or I watch the news or something outside myself. And once I get going, I'm good. Or
yeah.
I walk with friends. I'll go walking with friends and just catching up and getting the latest gossip gets me out the door. So I find ways to manipulate myself to keep active.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody does that to a certain extent, but that is definitely the 10-minute rule, I think, is good for everybody, no matter what it is. Like, give yourself an out after 10 minutes and I've never taken it. I've never been like, I'm out. I've never turned around.
And, Celine, I look at fitness and what I've come to realize it does for my head. I am going to be training my whole life.
Hmm.
Now at 57, I'm training for when I'm 90. So every day that I put towards that, and I guess it's because I've looked at my family and how people age. We have cancer in our family, and I train with the end in mind. So, yeah, I train because, of course, I still want to look good. But really, I want to be at 90, able to chase kids, my grandkids play at the park. I want to be an engaged and active senior. And everything I do now is leading so I can get out of bed by myself, that I could shower, that I can put things up in the cupboard, that I can open a jar by myself. I am training so that when I age, I defy expectation.
Yeah, you have a great quote on your website about age is a great equalizer, but you're part of the resistance. I saw that on your website, which, yeah.
100% am, because I look at my clients and I look at how people are aging, and I don't want to go down the path where someone else has to get me out of bed or put me in a shower or, God forbid, clean my behind. I want to be aging as well as I can be. And it started back when I was younger, but now it's even more critical
Yeah,
because of what.
it takes reverse engineering, and that there's a lot of people talking about that, and I think it's really important. There's that idea of you have, sort of this, you're a marginal decade of life, like where things are slipping when you're quite a bit older, but like, how do you best prepare yourself for that, for all the things you're talking about, to stay independent, to stay vital, to stay, and it has to start wherever you are now. It has to be like, yeah.
And it's hard because, there are days that my mood with menopause, I just want to weep. I get those weepy, sad moments, or feeling sorry for myself, because it's a hard stage of life. I remember going through getting my period the first time, I was 11 years old, Celine. And I remember, having my cycle and then the cramps and thinking, I have to go through this every month for the rest of my life, just feeling like you've been sentenced to hell.
Yeah.
And, and now at 57 or going through menopause, you really can go through a period of grief where you feel let down by your body, you don't feel understood by your spouse or family, you're moody, you're tired. All this stuff is changing with you and colliding with your career. And you really do have to be kind to yourself through this time, compassionate, kind, be your own advocate. If shit doesn't feel right, you go and find somebody who's going to listen to you. Don't minimize yourself. You have to be your own advocate and be kind to yourself.
How do you take that approach to the women you work with?
Oh, I have been put in my profession for a reason.
Mm.
I talk about the bully and being, there's so much throughout my life. I'm actually working on a memoir, but being the underdog, and I believe I'm an advocate to my clients. So whether it's the menopause doctor that they need, or physicians, or therapists, psychiatrists, or physiotherapists, I am an advocate for them. And they don't necessarily always want to go, because we women have a tendency to let things slide, right? But letting things slide can hurt us. In 2000, I had a rollover, and I didn't realize it then, but I woke up around 2018. So 5 years ago, I would have been 52, and I couldn't lift my head.
What did you have?
It's called cervical radiculopathy. And I opened a thing on my phone to read about it, and I was textbook. The patient wakes up one morning and cannot lift their head. Yeah, that was me. My husband had to lift my head to get me out of bed in the mornings. Celine, the pain was so excruciating. It was like a knife was stabbing me down the back of my neck.
What causes that?
That car accident.
Oh, you had the rollover was a car accident.
Yeah, in 2000, I had degeneration in the vertebrae in my neck. So C4, C5 was being compressed. And the funny thing was, again, about being an advocate with your question for women, I've learned the hard way. They sent me to a hospital here in town, and I was explaining to that surgeon what was happening with me in the spine clinic. And the surgeon patted me on the hand and said, you should try massage and try this lady. Like, he kept patting me on the hand and minimizing me. Celine, I've mentioned before that I was a very strong girl. And even now in my 50s, late 50s, I one arm row with 70-pound dumbbells. I am strong. I couldn't carry my own purse.
Wow.
So I fought with this man, and he said, okay, fine, I'll send you for an MRI. 6 months later, having that MRI, it came back, it said critical, go straight to the hospital. 7 days later, they came down, they put me under, and they put a bar at C4, C5. Advocate. I have been through dealing with the medical establishment in many different scenarios. That one was critical, but I am an advocate for my clients, because women, we tend to just put up with things. Okay, maybe it's not as bad as this person's telling me. It's all in my head. No.
I don't have time for this. I need to take care of X, Y, Z and everybody else.
That's right. We women, go and get things checked, because I've learned they don't get better. They actually can get worse and detrimental. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yes. So, and I assume that you have all of your women, do they come to you to weight train? Is anybody still resistant to weight training in this day and age that you see?
Well, so I have 4 members on staff, and I have 3 of them that are kinesiologists. So we do get a lot of hip surgery, knee, back, shoulder. So yeah, we do a lot of resistance training, mobility work. Women can be resistant to training in the sense that they get accustomed to lifting 3-pound dumbbells and 5-pound dumbbells, and they come in doing the same thing for 5 years and wondering why their body hasn't shifted. And I have to explain to them, that they need to create that stimulus in order for their body to respond and to change. And that being strong is actually to their benefit, not to their detriment. One last thing, I did a bone density scan. And I was wondering where I was after all these changes, at my stage of life. And my results were almost off the chart.
Excellent.
I
Yeah.
was like, right, just halfway over where the chart was. And the physician said, get out of here. just get out of here. So lift, challenge your muscles. They'll challenge your bones. And we women need to stay strong.
So important. It like all the research coming out is just like, if you're going to do one thing, it's that, right? Your muscle is everything.
It is everything. Getting out of bed, picking up your grandkids. In fact, I sometimes manipulate my clients by having them squat down, picking up the grandkids. Oh, and then it just, okay, that's why I'm doing this, right? Getting people to realize the real life, how things transcend to the real life, because that's what we're doing. Yeah, you're gonna have a great tush, but I also want you to be able to, pick up those grandbabies, right? And bend over and pick up groceries or whatever it is you're doing. We still need to train for life.
100%. Well, Sandra, it's so delightful talking to you. I'm wondering if there's anything that you had hoped to relay to our audience that we haven't talked about yet.
We've spoken about a lot of things. Maybe one of the recurring themes I see with women in general, and that would be self-care, that it's not selfish. It is self-care. You do need to take time for yourself every day, and that you are worth it. Honestly, if you're not looking after yourself, you're not bringing your best self forward to your spouse or your kids or your career. So it does start with you, and you do need to be actively involved and mindfully involved in your own self-care.
What does that look like for you?
Well, one of the things I've had to learn to do is meditate. So when 2020 began, for starters, in Canada, 42% of the fitness industry was wiped out with COVID, okay? And so when it happened, I saw myself just going over this financial precipice because we were a brick and mortar location. We were always working hands-on with people, and we wound up pivoting online. Celine, in my sleep, I was dreaming about work. And so I don't know how I came across it, but I found this Headspace app. And I do a lot of listening to the guided meditations. In fact, this morning I listened to one called Self-Love and Everyday Thinking, but I use it as a means of getting into my head and getting me to calm down and to remember to look after me. I have to start with me. Anxiety is one of the things that has accelerated with going through menopause. And yeah, anxiety and being more fearful. And I don't like going down that rabbit hole. So the app, I don't listen to it every day, but each time I listen to it, it reinforces why I need to keep doing that for my head. And so meditation is another means of self-care for me.
Yeah, that is super important. And the anxiety and fear piece, a lot of people, myself included, can relate. So that is very important.
I've anticipated all of these things coming from hormonal changes, but here we are.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being part of the resistance and part of the, like joining us here.
Thank you, Celine.
Thank you. And do let me know as you go down this road with your hormone therapy, other things that you might notice, because I am curious how that might impact you, if those other elements like the joint pain.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. You're a part of the resistance, and we're lucky to have you.
Thank you. Well, that's our show. And it is time for our summer podcast break. We will take 2 weeks off, and we will be bringing you 2 of our most popular shows as replays over that 2-week period. Then, and listen up, when we come back, I have one of the most requested topics for your ears, a show devoted to menopause, anxiety, and fear. I had a brilliant discussion with Dr. Claire Spencer, who is one of the founders of My Menopause Center in the UK. And we talk all about why so many of us end up feeling anxious and fearful, and sometimes outright frozen with fear during this transition, what to do about it, why it's happening, all the details. So come on back for our replays over the next couple weeks, and then a whole bunch of great new episodes that I have lined up for you, including that one on anxiety when we get back. And until then, as always, y'all knew what to do. Stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, and please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends, and please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.